I am so excited about this video because I have permission to share with you an excerpt from a cyber champion training that I hosted recently. The topic of the training was the hidden cost of AI, and for this video, I'm going to share the section on secure vibe coding. Welcome back to Netsec Explained. Let's get into it. Okay, secure vibe coding. Now, this is a quote that I think about often, and it says, if a surgeon worked twice as fast, but the patient didn't survive, nobody would consider that productive. And when it comes to vibe coding, this is the challenge we often run into. We can pump out code twice as fast in the same amount of time, but does that mean that it's healthy to do so? This is also known as the tactical tornado from software design philosophy. What it does is it allows us to push more code out to solve the tactical solutions, but we're not looking at the code base strategically, and so we can run into some problems with that. We'll get into that, but first, let's make sure we're on the same page. What is vibe coding? Simply put, vibe coding is just using an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT to generate code for us. The benefits are pretty obvious, right? You get functional working code quickly without needing to bother with all the nitty-gritty details or even without any coding experience. That alone makes vibe coding way too useful to ignore. It's also easier to throw away unwanted code because you didn't spend too much time making a feature in the first place. So getting rid of it is no longer an emotional conversation, and you don't feel like you've wasted your time. Of course, there's downsides too. With that, we have code quality issues where the code can be all over the place because the LLM won't have full context of the code base or know the proper way of doing things in your environment. And the reason why it's called the tactical tornado is because you're pumping out more and more code, but your tech debt and your hygiene issues tend to compound exponentially, and eventually you'll get to a point where nobody really knows what's going on if something breaks. The last part, and I wish more people knew about this, but AI isn't intelligent, despite the name artificial intelligence. Or at least not in the way that you and I would use it. The best way to explain this is with the Chinese room thought experiment. So the Chinese room thought experiment basically starts with a person in a room and basically nothing else in there. There's a door with a mail slot, and every so often they get a letter from the mail slot written entirely in Chinese characters. Now, they don't know Chinese, and so they have a book in the room with them where it says, if you see these Chinese characters, respond with these Chinese characters. And so the person follows the instructions, pushes the letter back through the envelope, or push it back through the mail slot, and then gets another one. On the other side of the door are Chinese native speakers, and from their perspective, they're having a conversation with another Chinese native speaker. So that begs the question, does the person in the room understand the conversation? And the obvious answer is no. That's the difference between syntax and semantics. Syntax is being able to follow a set of instructions, whereas semantics is actually understanding the conversation itself. And that's how LLMs work. They're very clever, don't get me wrong, but they don't fully understand, again, not in the way that you and I would use that word, what your code is doing or even some of the code that it's creating. So this is the inherent limitation of using AI for coding. So when it comes to security, there's really two phases that we need to think about. The first is how do we vibe code properly to kind of account for some of those issues. And then the second is going to be how do we vibe code securely so that we can build on top of that. If we look at the problems with vibe coding, a lot of them really stem from volume. Again, more code, more problems. For typical software developers, coding is the easy part. It's the planning, debugging, and troubleshooting that takes a lot of effort. That means if you're coding at the limit of your understanding, then when something goes wrong, you won't be able to debug it. And sure, you'll probably use AI to fix it, but it's also the thing that put the bugs there in the first place. So it might take a couple of rounds before it gets to where things are supposed to be, and you gotta hope that nothing else breaks along the way. Some common issues that we've seen is AI leaving dead code where it didn't pull out unused functions because it just didn't think to do that, or creating suboptimal solutions to remediate whatever problem you were trying to fix. And that can increase your code bloat and allow some dead code to stay in there. The last thing I want to touch on here is that AI systems are limited by their context window size. So context window is the certain amount of tokens that an AI can understand at one time before it starts losing stuff. When a developer codes, they have a full model of the application, or at least a key feature that they're focused on in their minds. But when it comes to vibe coding, LLMs don't have this context and lack the nuance and discernment to make smart decisions. It uses a very broad brush to get the job done. So, what's the better way to vibe code properly? Let's take a look. First, you want to use AI to augment your thinking, not outsource your thinking. You need to be the expert in the loop in order to guide the AI towards the goal with clear constraints and a standard way of doing things. That means understanding what you're trying to do in the first place without even writing a single line of code. And then, of course, no matter the size of the application, you need to make sure that you've reviewed your design and you explicitly create functions and methods that reinforce that direction. Personally, I like to use vibe coding as a scaffolding to design and build more robust versions of my applications. I often think of them as a 3D printer for code, where they're great for iterating, but not the best for handling industrial loads. I use it to act as a first draft so that I can see something working and really kind of understand what my vision is and then adjust from there. Sometimes I'll even rewrite some of the code by hand, and other times I'll rein in the LLM to make specific changes. Again, the best part, vibe coding saves you the pain of throwing away already written code because you didn't pour too much of your time into it in the first place. So it allows rapid prototyping for that reason. Oh, and also you want to use Git as your save point. So use Git branching and Git commits often so that you can always revert back to something that you need to. Some helpful tips. Vibe coding is great for boilerplate code and frameworks. This is code that's worth having, but not really worth writing. The sad truth is that most code is junk and really only exists to support the more meaningful features, which is great because vibe coding can do really well here. You also want to review what libraries it wants to include in your project. LLMs are notorious for when they want to include a library but only really use a single function from that library, which can cause real code bloat and introduce their own set of vulnerabilities. What you're doing is, for every library you're including, you're increasing your own attack surface. Actually, there's a whole new class of cyber attacks called slop squatting, where attackers check to see what packages LLMs hallucinate the most, and then they create a package and inject malware into them. And they'll usually do this on PyPip, or they'll do it on NPM. And we've been seeing a lot of supply chain attacks from that. So keep an eye on your libraries and make sure to keep them updated. Remember, vibe coding is legacy code. Even the latest and greatest models were trained months ago. And so many things can change from then. As you go through, make small changes at a time. You want to avoid what's called the dumb zone, which is where enough of the context window is being used that it starts to get confused and make mistakes. Think of it like having a conversation with somebody who rambles a lot, and then 10 minutes in, you have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah, this happens to AI too. And of course, make sure you know what your code is doing at all times and why. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about suboptimal solutions and code bloat. Okay, just to pause for a second, notice I haven't said anything about security yet. That's because we need to get these basics down first before we can build on top of them. So let's shift into vibe code security now, once you have a solid grasp of some of these other proper coding techniques. First and foremost, the number one thing that I would recommend to bump up your security as you're coding with AI is threat modeling. It's not as boring as it sounds, and it's actually a lot easier than people think. But this is the number one thing that I would recommend for you. It's pretty simple too. Just the basic version of a threat modeling is you want to answer these 4 questions. What are we trying to do? What can go wrong? How do we fix it? And how did we do? That's all you need to do to start threat modeling. If you answer those 4 questions, you're doing it. And that's There's definitely more that you can do. And if you're interested, I actually have a video on how to properly threat model an application. But for now, this is enough to get you started. Typically, threat modeling should be done when you're planning an app or a new feature before you write any code. It lets you get a better idea of how your design is doing from a security and risk standpoint. What's great too is that you can use vibe coding like Claude, Copilot, Claude Code, Codex, whatever you want to use, to go back through and review your code based on your threat model and suggest changes. Lately, I've been recommending a threatmodel.md file that you have your LLM update as you go through with your coding tasks. And of course, you always want to make sure that you're doing proper cleanup and QA as well. This slide's really cool. Not every LLM makes the same mistakes, and this chart gives you an idea of what vulnerabilities each LLM introduces into your application. So we can see here that Gemini 3 Pro tends to have business logic issues and data flow issues, where Claude 4.5 has some observability and access control issues. Composer, storage IO, and access control. So a lot of this comes from some really smart researchers where they asked a bunch of different LLM models to vibe code similar applications and see what the most common vulnerabilities were between them. I think some of this kind of reflects what I've been seeing out in the wild, where vibe-coded applications have issues specifically with business logic and access control, as well as sensitive information disclosure, because it doesn't always have an understanding of what's considered sensitive and what's not sensitive. But mostly around the access control, I'm seeing that the LLMs don't consistently apply your access control scheme in new functions and endpoints. To get a little more detailed, here's what we commonly see. So access control issues, as I was saying, it won't consistently apply authorization and authentication controls. I recommend using a standard method for implementing authorization and authentication. That way you tell the LLM, hey, you have to be doing this on every API endpoint, even the ones that are supposed to be public. Insecurely storing API keys. This is also really common because the LLM is really focused on the piece that it's working on, and it doesn't have, or at least it doesn't import a lot of context around how you're storing your credentials for API keys and things of that nature. Ideally, you should be using a secret store and then have the application go out and securely grab those API keys. But sometimes the LLM will just write the keys in your environment variables or in the code itself just to make sure that the function works as it understands. Again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying with the context window and the dumb zone. LLMs try to work around this as best they can, but that introduces other problems in your application. I already mentioned dependency bloat, right? This is where it starts to include libraries, but really only add one or two functions from those libraries. So it just greatly increases your code base as well as your attack surface. Input validation and sanitization. The LLMs don't always think about properly securing input filtering and output encoding. Instead, it's focused more on functionality. And so if the feature operates as it should, the LLM's pretty happy. But this is where we as the experts go in and have to say, no, we should be doing validation here and encoding there. Sensitive information disclosure, LLMs don't always have context of what the other API endpoints are doing, and sometimes it'll include debugging messages or error messages that are overly verbose that I, as an attacker, can now start to pull sensitive information or details out of your application. And then of course, API overuse. This is actually a new type of attack where most applications are no longer being made by themselves, and instead they are calling out to other APIs that might have a dollar cost associated with them. And so this relates to what's being called denial of wallet, where maybe you're spending $10 a day on API calls on a normal day, but I, as an attacker, if you don't include rate limiting or some sort of limitation in how much your cost spend is, I can just have it automatically send a whole bunch of API requests. And now your $10 a day turns into $100,000 and you're out of that money. There's also ways that attackers are financially incentivized to do this, where they can actually get paid from those API calls, but that depends very wildly. The more important part is, again, that denial of wallet and just making sure that you're adding rate limits in, because LLMs don't consistently do that. So remember, to vibe code securely, we do it in 2 phases. First, make sure you dial in your coding practices to make stronger, more maintainable code. Then focus on threat modeling and make sure your most common security risks are covered across the board. With that, I put some resources in the description down below that I think you'll find very useful. And if you're still learning web app development, then you should check out my other video on things you need to know for modern application hacking next. I'll see you there.